So I want to talk tonight about reboots and remakes. And if you're curious at all as to why somebody who is obviously not an expert in anything filmmaking is talking about this, it's because one of my favorite YouTubers is Count Jacula, who does a lot of movie reviews. Really smart, really knows his stuff, nicest guy I've ever met. You know, and I was watching one of his older reviews, which happens to be for Dark Shadows, the Tim Burton movie. And it just so happens that I'm trying to watch all the 1960s Dark Shadows in order. I've gotten most of them on DVD from Netflix. Hulu has them where you can stream them. I just don't want to pay for two accounts, but I streamed what I could from Hulu with my free account until I was all caught up with what Netflix happened to be missing. So there is that. And it got me thinking about reboots and remakes. And let's be honest, the majority of the time, they suck. They suck, okay? And it's not that they can't work. I admit I have not seen the Battlestar Galactica remake. Yes, I have seen episodes of the original, which is why I kind of didn't want to watch the remake when it came out. Now, I might give it a chance. I hear that it's actually really good and way better than the original. But you know what? I am so behind on shows that I've only just as of last month finished watching season 12 of Supernatural. Yeah, I'm that far behind. So, and I've got the Dark Shadows thing going on. So, and there's so many Netflix shows that I want to see. So, yeah. Sorry. But yeah, I'll probably watch it, at some point. Alfred Hitchcock actually remade a lot of his own movies. I bet a lot of people don't know that unless they're really huge Hitchcock fans. I only know that because we happen to have some of his originals at the library at one time. Now, we got rid of all of our VHS, so we don't have his originals anymore. We have his remakes, and his remakes are more popular and better known than his originals, like The Man Who Knew Too Much, So, yeah, remakes and reboots can work, but the majority of the time they don't. The Star Trek remakes or reboots or whatever the heck you want to call them suck. They are terrible movies. They are terrible, terrible movies. I am sorry. The only Captain Kirk is William Shatner. The only Uhura is Nichelle Nichols, okay? The originals are far superior for all their so-called hokey stuff. They're better written, better acted, better directed, and way better casting. This Ghostbusters reboot, I'm sorry. That was a terrible movie. That was a terrible, terrible, terrible movie. And I'm not saying that because it was an all-female cast. I went in there with the thought in mind that I'm going to give it a fair chance. And it was one of the worst movies I have ever seen. I personally found it a misogynistic pile of puke. Somebody's going to be angry with me about that. But yeah, the whole obsession with Chris Helmsworth character, I'm sorry. Okay, any woman, even if the woman herself is dumb, meets a man that dumb, she's going to tell him, you know what, dude, please go have a vasectomy so your DNA never gets spread. She's not going to obsess and drool over him, no matter how supposedly cute he is. As soon as he opens his mouth, I hate that movie. We did not need the first Ocean's 11 remake. All right, there was already a perfect Ocean's 11, and it starred people like Sammy Davis Jr., Frank Sinatra, and Dean Martin. George Clooney is not fit to lick their shoes. He's not fit to lick their shoes, all right? And this Ocean's 8 thing, oh my God, wasn't the Ghostbusters thing bad enough? Why do we need an all-female Ocean's 8? Okay? You want to do an all-female crime movie? Come up with something original. All right? Give a vehicle that is completely original. You didn't need Ocean's 8. What we need at the end of the day It's not a MacGyver reboot. It's not a Dark Shadows movie with Johnny Depp as Barnabas Collins. We need more of what Gene Roddenberry did. We need a next generation. We need new characters that have links to the old. Whether you have somebody who's the descendant of Barnabas Collins and Julia, the psychiatrist, because I understand the writer's intentions were to eventually have them married and move to Singapore. Yeah, Barnabas gets cured of his vampirism. I won't tell you how, but he gets cured of his vampirism in the original show. So you could have his and Julia's children come back to Collinwood, and you could say that the vampire curse didn't leave him entirely. So it got passed down to his children, and it might show in the fact that they have almost a hypnotic way about them, and they're all severely anemic, and they all have really bad tempers. And you could actually have one of them have died at some point and nobody knows about it, and they came back as a vampire, but because they didn't get cursed like their father was, they have not the weaknesses he has. I mean, in folklore, vampires can go out in sunlight. This whole vampires burn up in sunlight is a Hollywood thing. It's not actual folklore. So you could say that, say he had a daughter. Obviously, if he had a daughter, he would name her Sarah after his baby sister who died. And you could say Sarah Collins doesn't burn up in sunlight. She can eat a certain amount of food, but not all foods. She has to pretend allergies to some of them. But she definitely needs blood. And she's she can change into a bat. Dogs and cats don't like her very much. The kid who played David Collins apparently doesn't act anymore. So you could just say his character died. In the TV show, his mother was a phoenix. So you could say the fact that he was half phoenix actually caused him to die sooner, because the mythology in the show is there can only ever be one phoenix at a time. So she always killed her children at some point, so she could keep going. So you could just say he died young because of his phoenix legacy. But you could have he did marry in the show, as far as I remember. He's supposed to have a wife named Violet, but I would actually like to see it tied to another Dan Curtis show, which is Kolchak the Night Stalker. So you could say that his first wife died and he married the daughter of Carl Kolchak, and they had a child together before he passed away. So you could have that. Barnabas was obviously a womanizer, because he was with Angelique before Josette, and he just went from woman to woman to woman to woman to woman. So you could say that he cheated on Julia a lot, and he has a lot of children out of wedlock, and they could be coming back to Collinwood. You could even have one of them, like the very last child he had before he passed away, be there. So you could tie it back, and you could deal with subject matter that they couldn't deal with in the 60s. You could deal with different sexual orientations, whether you have a character who's gay, bi, pan, ace, which for those who don't know, ace is asexual. You could have a transsexual character. You could have a character with PTSD. You could have one of Barnabas's children be a very vicious serial killer. So you could deal with with psychological issues, along with all the ghosts and the vampires and the werewolves, and the phoenixes and all the other supernatural elements. Tie up some of the original plot lines from the original show as best you can. That would have been way better than what we got. We don't need a MacGyver reboot. What we need is maybe MacGyver had a kid out of wedlock, and we see the continuation of MacGyver's legacy. Or you can say that MacGyver got married after the show ended. But let's face it, MacGyver had a lot of women himself. So it is, he could have a few kids out there, because, and I mean, we don't even need to do next generations and reboots and stuff, because there are lots of stories out there that have not been turned into movies that I know of. Because one of my favorite fairy tales is called The Samurai's Daughter, and it's about the daughter of a samurai whose father is banished, and so she tries to join him in his banishment, and she even kills a sea serpent and cures the Emperor of insanity because she lifts a curse on him when she kills the sea serpent. That would make an awesome movie. Excuse me. There's book series that I love. I mean, Jonas Cabal the Necromancer, starring Tom Hiddleston. I would love to see that to be a movie. There's Marvel comics that haven't been turned into movies yet. I know that Brother Voodoo is not exactly a super popular character, but I would love to see a Brother Voodoo movie. You know, I would now that Marvel has the movie rights to Blade back. I would love to see Blade done properly, where he was born in 1922 in Soho, London. I realize that that's a remake or a reboot, but just that's another thing is I would like to see proper adaptations of books or comic books or what have you. I would love to see a Hunchback of Notre Dame where Phoebus is just as much of a villain as Frollo, except in a different way. He's vain, he's money hungry, and he doesn't love Esmeralda at all. He lets her die, and he marries another woman for her money. Yeah, I want a Hunchback of Notre Dame where Quasimodo and Esmeralda die. That's what I want. I want a Phantom of the Opera where we have all the characters that they took out, and we have a Christine who is a nearsighted blue-eyed blonde. Yeah, read the book, folks. She is not a brown-eyed brunette, with 20/20 vision. She is a nearsighted blue-eyed blonde. And I would love to have, is it Dragoda? Dragoda, I don't know how to pronounce it. Some characters, they call him the Persian, which I realize some people would say is really racist, but that's what some of the characters call him. But Eric, the Phantom, calls him by this name that basically means police officer. So I would love to see, I haven't seen him in an adaptation since a animated feature made in the 1980s, which is probably the most book accurate one, except they still made Christine a brown-eyed brunette. All right, you're doing an animated feature. You could have drawn her as a blue-eyed blonde. I gotta put you down, Molly. A Dracula adaptation where Mina's not his long-lost love. She's just a means of revenge, because that's all she is in the book to him. She's just a way to get at his enemies. So if we're going to do reboots and remakes, let's do proper adaptations of books. All right, and of graphic novels. Like I said, Blade in the graphic novels was born in 1922 in Soho, London. All right, and that would be awesome because it's actually established in Marvel Comics that there was vampires working for Hitler. Captain America even says in the graphic novels that he fought Nazi vampires. So you could actually have a movie where a teenage Blade fights with alongside the Howling Commandos to slay vampires working for Hitler. I don't know if that's happened in the graphic novels themselves. I have not found such a graphic novel, but that would be awesome. That would be awesome. I've gone on much longer than I intended. I intended to make this a 10-minute video, but I don't script these things. I just blather on about whatever comes on top of my head. My point is, reboots and remakes the majority of the time don't work. Maleficent was terrible, all right? Cinderella was terrible. We don't need a live-action Little Mermaid unless we go back to how Hans Christian Andersen originally wrote it and have it where she's not in love with the prince. She wants to marry him so she can have a human soul. That was the whole thing in the book. She wanted a human soul, and she focused on this prince because she didn't want to turn into Seafoam when she died. And guess what? He marries somebody else, and she dies. I would much rather see an adaptation that is faithful to the story than an adaptation of the Disney version that I really don't like anyway. Yeah, we don't need a live action Mulan. The Mulan we've got is perfect. All right? Unless you want to make one that's more faithful to the original story. I'm sorry that I've blathered on so much. This is just something I feel really passionate about. Reboots and remakes, the majority of the time, do not work. And it's instead of reboots and remakes, either do something original or give us a next generation. Give us new bloodlines. You know, give us enough of the old to feel nostalgic about it, but more new stuff that we couldn't have before. Thank you.